Hey Celtic fans, I'm Thomas Mott. Welcome into today's video where we jump into the latest Boston Celtics news and rumors. And of course, this one centers around the NBA trade deadline because that's at the front of all of our minds as we get closer and closer to the end of March and the March 25th NBA trade deadline. Let's discuss a little bit in terms of John Collins. There's some reports out there, The Athletic, some other websites talking about how the Celtics are interested in trading for the Hawks power forward in order to hopefully bolster the lineup and bolster their chances at making a deep run come Eastern Conference playoff time. The deal with John Collins is very simple. Atlanta and him have had their differences for a very, very long time. There was contract disputes, there's just playtime disputes, and there's overall fit problems right now for the Hawks and John Collins because the Hawks went out and got a lot of big men, or at least they added a guy like Clint Capella and then Danilo Gallinari in the offseason, and it seems like John Collins' fit with the team doesn't seem to be overall perfect as well as the Hawks could potentially want. So the pairing of Collins with the Boston Celtics, again, gaining heat, and it makes sense from both sides. As we mentioned, the NBA trade deadline, of course, it's March 25th, and CBS Sports has a really interesting write-up here talking about how not only the asking price, but also the fit in terms of what John Collins could go ahead and bring to the Boston Celtics. Quote on your screen right now, here it is. Atlanta's asking price for Collins has been predictably high. His counting stats are down slightly, but that's also based on Atlanta's off-season acquisitions needing minutes and shots. Collins has largely fit in well alongside the newer Hawks, taking advantage of the talent around him by scoring on low-maintenance cuts and putbacks. His defense has improved this season as well, making him one of the more valuable young big men in basketball, end quote. Okay, I'm going to dispute this just a little bit because I would disagree in terms of what I've seen from John Collins. He's not happy in Atlanta. And you're talking about whether he merges well with the new additions. He really hasn't. Like, they're not really playing John Collins and Clint Capella on the floor at the same time. They try to, but they'd much rather go ahead and just have Clint Capella be the one big man versus having to go ahead and mix in John Collins because John Collins is not a stretch four, and he's not really good defensively. The article on CBS Sports talks about how he's improved his defense this season, and that's just simply not true. He consistently has been rated one of the worst power forwards from a defensive perspective in the entire NBA. Last year for the Atlanta Hawks, the Hawks had two of the worst defensive players at their respective positions in Trae Young, and the other was John Collins. So the defense has not improved a lot, but the scoring ability still remains there, and that's the draw for the Boston Celtics, right? You're not getting this guy and hoping he's going to be a rim protector or a defensive guy down inside the paint. You get him to go ahead and be an offensive, not juggernaut, but creating offense from the four position perspective down inside the paint and maybe a little bit outside of it because he's not really a stretch four player at all. What do you guys think? You guys want the Boston Celtics to go ahead and trade for John Collins? Give this video a thumbs up. I'm very curious if you guys are feeling good about John Collins. It's been rumored for a while, or if you're kind of hot or cold on John Collins, give this video a thumbs up. Want to see those thumbs ups. Okay. The question, again, really comes to what do you want out of your four, right? And potentially, again, John Collins can play the five, but he normally plays the four, the power forward spot. You have Tristan Thompson and Daniel Theis, who've been pretty good so far in 2020. You're not saying that Thompson's been terrible. I mean, 7.9 points per game, and Theis, again, 9.2 points per game. But when you look at Collins' overall stats, he has been a much better scorer as he nearly doubles all of these guys at 17.9 points per game. The rebounds are still up there, and the field goal percentage remains at a relatively high point at 52.8 points per game. Now, again, 52.8 with his field goal percentage per game, excuse me. Again, the question with the Celtics and Collins is not when you come in and go ahead and make an impact offensively, is can you go ahead and live with the idea that he's not a good defensive player and that he really has never been a good defensive player and hasn't been a good defensive player his entire career, right? If you want to bring him in to go ahead and be the starting four in this team or even a rotational guy on this team, although he probably needs to go and be the starter based on what you're going to have to pay him with contract extensions and all the sort of trade price that was talked about by CBS Sports, you have to be okay with his ability to go ahead and play defense. And the Hawks, they've been a little bit off on that, and they've been off on that for the past couple of years. He's not really gotten much better. So there's tremendous upside, but also some downside there in a loaded Eastern Conference that the Celtics are trying to go ahead and navigate by potentially adding somebody at the trade deadline, obviously what we're talking about it here right now. Okay, name a player you guys want the Boston Celtics to go ahead and trade for. Give me those in the comments. I'm very curious if you guys have a different name besides John Collins, or if Collins at the top of the list. I've seen some other names being floated around, but again, John Collins has been kind of that lead guy in the old trade deadline rumor stuff. And so let me know what you guys think in terms of a player with the Celtics to go ahead and trade for. Now, if you're a Celtics fan, again, you should go ahead and be subscribed to our YouTube channel here, Boston Celtics Today, youtube.com/Celtics TV, as we have already had 4,500 subs and counting, we're growing as quickly as we possibly can, and we know that they're obviously going to go ahead and do something with their trade exception. At least we expect them to go ahead and make a trade for the NBA trade deadline, so we will keep you updated and posted and provide plenty more news and rumors just like the one you see in today's video. So again, make sure you guys are subscribed as we get closer and closer to the NBA trade deadline. Boston Celtics Today, youtube.com/Celtics TV. All right, Celtic fans, let's go ahead and jump into some more Boston Celtics news and rumors, and this one has to do with the one that's been circulating for, it feels like forever, but the past couple of weeks, and that is Tristan Thompson, the ability for the Celtics to go ahead and trade him at the NBA trade deadline. Well, that's not necessarily new, but the new news is that the Toronto Raptors could be one of the teams that makes the most sense in order to offload a guy like Tristan Thompson. So, the report again, the Celtics are open to trading Thompson, and the Raptors are listed as one of the most possible destinations, according to Chris Hayes of YahooSports.com. We put a big article out paying different destinations you trade Tristan Thompson to, and the Raptors were the #1 destination. Now, of course, Thompson signed the 2-year deal this offseason, and he hasn't been terrible, and he's been a lot better over the past couple of weeks, but still, the trade deadline looms on March 25th, and so Thompson's name is continuing to go ahead and be thrown around. Boston.com has a good write-up on this. We'll throw that quote up on the screen right now saying, quote, "Two things have worked against Thompson in Boston, however. The emergence of Robert Williams as a potential contributor now, and the emergence of Joel Embiid as an MVP candidate in Philadelphia. Williams' recent play has demanded more minutes. He's blocking more than 3 shots per 36 minutes and has shown flashes of really impressive passing vision in addition to his high-flying dunks. Embiid, meanwhile, has punished the Celtics in both of their meetings this year. That's hardly Thompson's fault." Now, it is hardly Thompson's fault, that's true, but still, he is one of the guys on the floor who's being tasked with defending or finding a way to defend Joel Embiid, and as the article mentioned, and as all Celtic fans know, Embiid has been on an absolute tear, at least pre-injury, and now whenever he comes back from the knee, the bone bruise, he should be able to go ahead and get back to his MVP form. In terms of the Raptors and the trade that you could potentially go ahead and make with Tristan Thompson, if there's a way to go ahead and get Aaron Baines back in exchange, the former Celtic to come back and play defense for Boston in a trade, I would be very, very interested in that because he's been, honestly, really good against Joel Embiid. Look at the numbers that Embiid has put up against the Toronto Raptors. He's shooting just 32% against Toronto. And so to me, it would make a lot of sense if you were to go ahead and trade Tristan Thompson, not only to get rid of him, but bring in an additional player who can provide some rotational depth there at the center spot and provide some, at least an ability to go ahead and hopefully defend a guy like Joel Embiid because that's looking like what it's going to be. Obviously the Nets are going to be up there, and we'll show you the standings here in a second, but right now, the lineup does have not a glaring hole, but a definite need to go ahead and be bolstered in order to defend against big-time centers like a guy like Joel Embiid and like the guys that the Nets are going to be trotting out there once Blake Griffin is back and healthy. Kemba, Smart, Jalen Tatum, yes, they all need to be out there, they all need to play, and they're all untouchable, but you see the Thompson spot there. I know that Williams has been pretty darn good in his limited amount of play time, but at the same time, adding a guy like Aaron Baines could be a real option if they want to go ahead and trade Thompson to the Toronto Raptors and not just get either draft picks or money back in return. Drop a like if you guys think the Boston Celtics should upgrade at center. That seems to be the real theme and the real focus here as we get closer to the NBA trade deadline. Again, give this video a thumbs up if you think the Boston Celtics should go ahead and upgrade the team and the position at center. Again, as you look at the Eastern Conference standings, the teams that are at the top are all the ones with big men who can play very, very well, minus the Bucks. Right? You get the Sixers and Nets, the two teams at the top right now, and both of them are going to have at least a couple of big men trotted out in a 7-game series, and it looks like they'd be giving a lot of trouble to a team like the Boston Celtics, whose best big man, at least starting big man right now, is Tristan Thompson. You got to deal, obviously, with Joel Embiid, who will be the NBA MVP if he can get back healthy sooner rather than later, and the Nets, they still have Andre Jordan, and then, of course, you look at a guy like Blake Griffin, who can terrorize people on the inside. So as you sit there as the 5th seed at 20-18, Boston definitely needs to go ahead and take a look at is Tristan Thompson, who again, he's not been terrible, and he's not the worst defensive player, but against a guy like Embiid, it just kind of makes you want to go, let's upgrade, let's make this a little bit better, and perhaps Boston is gearing up to go ahead and do that with a trade from Thompson for Thompson and ship him out to Toronto or somewhere else. Will Boston trade Tristan Thompson? We'll go ahead and end on this. Type Y down below for yes. If you don't think that they will, then go ahead and type N for no. I think they're going to give it a good try. You can't guarantee anything at the NBA trade deadline. Who knows? But the trade exception is obviously looming, and then the fact that they want to go ahead and upgrade at center, I think there's a very, very, very good possibility they go ahead and trade Tristan Thompson. But we'll go ahead and wait and see if they want to make a run here at the Eastern Conference with the team that they have, or if they want to upgrade just a little bit and try and tweak the roster to be able to be more competitive against the likes of the juggernauts that are at the top of the Eastern Conference, the Nets and the Philadelphia 76ers.